Episode 21, and this week I look at the best security practices to protect yourself online as well as your crypto assets. Hey, and welcome to the Learn Cardano podcast, the podcast where we break down all the ins and outs of Cardano so that you can level up your Cardano skills. Get out of that newbie level and turn into that Cardano pro. That's right, you will be just that much better. I'm your host, Peter Buey, and this week we're going through a whole bunch of really best practices in terms of security, storing your crypto assets, as well as being engaged on various exchanges, the best security practices on these various exchanges that might exist around the world. Now, this all came about from an email that was sent to me, and thank you so much for inspiring this topic of conversation as well. So I go into all of these top security tips, especially if you're just starting out in the crypto space. You want to be set up correctly. You want to have all the right setups, the right hardware, protecting yourself the best way you possibly can. So this is what this episode is all about. I also have an interview with Professor Nick Nikiforakis from Stony Brook University in Long Island, New York, and he joins me on this episode to talk about these scams and his Twitter bot, which he's created called Cardano Phishing Bot, and it basically goes through all of these scams that appear online and logs them onto this Twitter bot so that you as a listener, as a user of Cardano, know that these websites are out there and you should be completely avoiding them. So he's doing some pretty cool stuff around that, and he's going to talk about how these phishing scams, how these online scams work, so you know, and you can be better educated about them. You can tell other people, and with education we can hopefully spread it out to other people and help them avoid these giveaway scams that keep on appearing over and over again. So that's coming up a little bit later after the main segment talking about security practices. Now, first off, let's get into a podcast review which has come in, and this one's from Terra O. Very informative, really good insight to all things Cardano. Awesome intro credits disclaimer as well. So if you haven't listened to the end of the podcast episodes, I have my financial disclaimer. This isn't financial advice. It's just for purpose of entertainment, etc. It's pretty cool. Listen to it. I like it if you haven't yet. So like I always say, if you really enjoyed this podcast series, please consider giving us that 5-star rating and review on the Apple Podcast Network. It really helps the discoverability of the podcast. It really spreads it out there. Okay, let's get into the news for this week. So for this week, there is only one really big news story that we really need to worry about, and that is the release of smart contracts. The date of when the hard fork event is going to happen has been announced, and that is September the 12th, 2021. Finally, the project will have smart contracts released, and I'm not entirely sure if we will see some of the DEXs that I've been interviewing over the last month on the network at that point in time. I know there's still a lot of development to do to finally reach that goal, but I'm pretty sure a lot of them are moving as closely and as fast as possible to that release date to see what happens. I do know, and I have heard, that there are many partners, exchanges, and other third parties that have been involved in working with IOG and the Cardano Foundation very closely to ensure that they have products ready to be released when the hard fork happens. So maybe we'll see it on the actual September the 12th. Maybe we'll see it a little bit after as things are slowly rolled out onto the blockchain. I'm pretty sure we're going to see some of the smaller scripts and the very simple stuff roll out and people start using them. So I'm excited to see what people have been working on in the background and what's going to be released onto the Cardano blockchain. Now, what does this actually mean? Smart contracts will bring a whole new era of transactions onto the blockchain and enable people to interact with it on a whole different level. So at the moment, people are just transacting and transferring ADA from one person to another, from their own wallets to an exchange, and buying and selling the value there. Or they may be buying an NFT from a sale, or someone might be using ADA to mint a brand new token or an NFT and sell it elsewhere. So that's the basic economy and what is happening on the blockchain at the moment. But with smart contracts, we can do a lot more smarter things. We can do some really cool applications. Everything from trading and swapping as you would on an exchange, but doing it directly on the blockchain. Or we can start DeFi protocols which are being built. And you can listen to many of the previous episodes if this is your first. Roll back and have a look at some of the episodes from episode 14 all the way to episode, I think, 19. I did a whole series of different DeFi applications, decentralized exchanges, and DeFi protocols that will be using smart contracts to allow people to tap into financial services that are built on the blockchain itself. You'll be able to borrow crypto assets or lock in your current crypto assets and take out fiat loans, all sorts of things like that. So this is what this era of smart contracts is going to bring to Cardano. So it's very exciting. The Ethereum space has had it for quite a long time, since 2017-ish, and that brought about a whole new economy on the Ethereum blockchain. So it's done quite a lot of things over that time, and over the last 4 years, it has seen explosive growth. So it's really exciting. There are other blockchains as well that have smart contracts as well, but it doesn't have the depth of community and usage that Ethereum has. But with the community that is behind Cardano, we should be seeing a very similar and same kind of effect which Ethereum had. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens after this point. So in a year's time, we'll come back to this. Who knows? I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm predicting that the space should have exploded and blossomed just as Ethereum did back in 2017. So that date has been finally released. We've all been waiting for it. And along with that, the price of ADA has gone up by quite a bit. If you look at the last 7 days, I think the lowest what I can see is $1.55 USD, and it went as high as $2.22 USD. So that's quite a nice, sizable jump over that last week when the news was announced. So who knows what the price will be over the next few weeks and months as smart contracts are rolled out. But we should see a lot more activity on the Cardano blockchain, and we should see a lot of transaction fees happen as people start interacting with it. The last little bit of news that also came out was the exact date for the Cardano Summit. And it lines up nicely with the release of smart contracts, thankfully. So the Cardano Summit will be on the 25th and 26th of September. And here where I am, I'll be trying to organize a little mini conference that will line up nicely with the full Cardano Summit. So here in Brisbane, Australia, I'm already in the plannings and in the works for finding the venues and gathering people that may be interested in coming and presenting to this little mini event. And hopefully we also get the approval from the Cardano Foundation as well. So that way we get a whole bunch of really cool giveaways, swag, and everything else that comes with the support of the Cardano Foundation as well. So fingers crossed that all comes through. We will know on the 20th of August or the 21st of August if that will happen. So fingers crossed, and we will start ripping away at organizing this little mini event for all the Cardano fans in Brisbane, Australia. Okay. All right, let's get into the main topic for this episode: best security practices for your crypto assets. So this whole topic came about from an email that I received from one of our listeners, and it reads, "Hi Peter, I'm enjoying your podcast and I want to start investing in Cardano. However, I'm a very cautious investor and want to make sure everything is secure before I invest any money. There are so many options for exchanges and wallets, as well as different advice for security of those things. I'm wondering if you could release a podcast episode discussing the first steps to investing in Cardano, how to compare different exchanges, wallets, and what security you would have set up on your computer and phone. For instance, should I make a new secure email for 2FA, or is my phone number sufficient? Some basic steps to investing in Australia for complete newbies would really help in giving me the confidence to start. Thanks for all you've done so far. And thank you so much for submitting that email and getting the topic inspiration in for this podcast episode. I won't mention your name because I didn't ask permission if I could, but let's get right into these different topics. So first off, looking at the wallets. Different Cardano wallets. Now, I mentioned and spoke about this in the very first episode of the podcast, but let's elaborate on it just that little bit more. At the moment, there are two main wallets that people use in the Cardano ecosystem, and that's Daedalus and Yoroi. So to recap, these are two very different types of wallets. The Daedalus wallet is a full node wallet, and the Yoroi wallet is a light wallet. So a full node wallet is a wallet that downloads the entire blockchain onto your computer. So this will only work on a laptop or a desktop device, desktop computer, I should say, and won't work on a tablet or mobile device. So a computer such as a Microsoft Surface, that's considered as a tablet because it's using a different chip, and the hard drive space may not be enough for what you need to engage with the Daedalus wallet and the blockchain. So that type of device won't really support Daedalus. On the other hand, you have Yoroi, which is a light wallet. It doesn't download the entire blockchain onto your computer. Instead, it connects to a third-party server. In this case, it's all managed by a company called Emergo, the creators of Yoroi, the light wallet. So now, when you're downloading and choosing either of these wallets, please ensure that you're downloading it from the correct place. So if you're going and downloading Daedalus, make sure you're downloading it from the correct website, and there's ways to check. So if you're Googling Daedalus wallet, it should usually come up as the first search result. And the address for it is daedaluswallet.io. Sometimes there's a slash there as well for English or different language translations, but as long as that main address is correct, you're in the right spot. And that goes the same for the Yoroi wallet as well. If you go into the website for Yoroi, the address should be yoroi-wallet.com. Now, when you're downloading it from the Google Play Store or on the Apple App Store, it should say Yoroi Light Wallet by Emergo. So from time to time, there are fake versions of these wallets, both of them that appear on the App Store. If you ever see Daedalus appear in the App Store or Google Play, it's 100% a fake, because Daedalus will not work on a mobile device because of the amount of disk space that it needs and the amount of bandwidth that it needs. I haven't seen a fake version of the Yoroi wallet as yet, but be aware, make sure that you're downloading and installing it from the correct place as well. It could happen. Now, if you're technically minded, there is what's called a SHA-256 checksum, and this is a unique code that comes with the download of that particular file that you're downloading to install on your computer, and it's displayed on the website. So you can use that checksum against the download to make sure that what you've downloaded is a real thing. It's if that checksum matches up with your download, then it is 100% the correct file that you have downloaded from an authentic website, and you can install it on your computer. So that's really important to make sure you check that if you know how. Now, there has been a fake version of the Daedalus wallet floating about last week. Just last week, a new version of the Daedalus wallet came out, and the spammers and hackers tried to release a fake version of it with the whole announcement of what was fixed and everything as well. So it looked pretty authentic, but at a glance, I could tell it was fake straight away. Looking at the domain name that this spammer was pushing out, it was not the correct domain name. So I pushed that out on social media, tried to get it retweeted as much as possible, and try to let everyone know and be aware that it's a fake version of Daedalus. So it's little things like that that could appear around and really trip you up. This fake version would get you to install the app, then restore your seed phrase on it. And as soon as you do that, the hackers have your seed phrase and they can restore the wallet anywhere they want and then transfer all your funds. I did hear of a couple of stories where people had fallen for this trap and had lost all their crypto assets as well. So it's sad, really, really sad to hear. Don't believe these fake profiles that claim to be from the Cardano Foundation or IOG. No one will contact you. Trust me, no one will contact you to download an update. The dataless will update itself. It will has a message that appears, and Yoroi will update in the background. You won't even know it happens. Okay, so that's a couple of things just to be aware of in regards to wallets. But just before we move on to the next part, there is a little pro tip. If you have a dataless wallet, you can actually restore that on your Yoroi wallet app. So you can have the same wallet displaying on both the different apps. So you can have an app created on dataless, restore on Yoroi, and you can see your balance there. So it's kind of a nice way of being able to have access to a full blockchain node in dataless, but also when you're on the move and you're using your mobile app or something, you can check your balance and see what's going on the Yoroi app as well. Now, this is really useful in a way because at times when there are peak usage on the Yoroi servers, you may not be able to interact with it. And on the weekend just past, when the price of ADA was skyrocketing, there was a lot of activity on the network. A lot of people found that Yoroi wallet app was becoming unresponsive. And this may have been because of high server loads. The blockchain was just being overwhelmed and users weren't able to actually get on and do what they needed to do. It could also be been an update or something that was caused at the epoch's changeover, because the epoch did end on the weekend as the price was rising. So it could be a whole bunch of compounding effects. So who knows? We don't know exactly what's happened there. But for the people that were trying to use Yoroi to transfer funds and stake it and do sorts of things, if they had it already pre-set up on dataless and it was already synced as well, they could have just used dataless to interact with the blockchain. So it's a really cool little pro tip to have. You can have it on both of the wallet apps. So along with your wallets, you would have created, or not created, but been given a seed phrase when you created your wallet. Now, it's really important that you protect this seed phrase. There is that disclaimer that comes up when you create your wallet for the very first time. Make sure no one can see it. If you lose this, you will lose all of your crypto assets that's stored on that wallet. So this 24-word seed phrase is extremely valuable and extremely important. So when you're first initially creating your wallet, you may have written it down on a post-it, on a piece of paper, whatever it may be. Now, if you have, and it still is on that piece of paper, you may want to consider upgrading from that. That piece of paper, the ink on it may fade. The pencil that you may have used could be rubbed off. And, it may get to a point where you just cannot read what's written on that piece of paper. Paper can also be eaten by pets, or small humans could cut it up into tiny little pieces without you even knowing. And worst of all, paper will burn. So if you had a house fire of some sort, or your home burnt down, or had even a small fire in your home, but just happened to be where you kept your seed phrases on that little piece of paper, it will be gone. So we need to avoid leaving it long term, especially on a piece of paper. So there are various hardware devices out there that will allow you to store your seed phrases safely on a fireproof, tamper-proof device. So I'll put a couple of links to these on the show notes. So if you're interested in some of the really fancy ones that look really nice and really cool, they do cost a little bit of money. Around the 200 USD mark. So if you have a little bit of money to invest in on one of these devices, you certainly can. And they look pretty cool. They usually go on the basis of writing down the first 4 letters of your seed phrase, characters, the first 4 characters, and then from there you'll be able to work out the rest of the words, the rest of the word from that first 4 letters, so you can prompt back in and restore your seed phrase onto your wallet. So it's a nice little way of doing it. pretty cool little devices. Maybe I'll get one as a gift for someone or something like that that's really into crypto. So check out the show notes if you want to check them out. But a really cheap way of going about and doing this is to get a little piece of aluminium, which you can pick up from a hardware store and may cost you maybe $5 at the most. Then you can buy an engraving tool or a letter stamper. And this will allow you to write your seed phrase onto this piece of metal and allow you to store it somewhere safe, somewhere secure. You can put it in an envelope, lock it away so no one can see it, and store it away safely. So now you have something that won't burn in a fire, something that you can store safely, something that doesn't look very valuable other than just being a strange piece of metal. You can give one to your family member that doesn't live at the same home. So if your house does get destroyed and you somehow still lose it, someone else may have it. They may not know what it is, don't know what to do with it, but you will, and you'll be able to restore it from that seed phrase. Now, the last way that you can store your seed phrase securely is on encrypted USB hard drive. So these little hard drives, that may be like a USB stick that has a fingerprint scanner, or something that you can punch in a couple of numbers or letters on to the actual device itself, so that the only way to unlock the data on it is to punch in that little pin or scan your fingerprint. And that will allow that USB stick or that little encrypted hard drive to be actually read and then release that data so you can see the file that's on there that has your seed phrase on there. So it's a nice little more techie way of doing it rather than using the low-tech alternative, which I actually prefer. There are stories where people have found that these encrypted devices fail, or the passphrase that they're trying to type in to unlock it is the right one, which they've used, but the device doesn't work. So that it could potentially fail. I don't know if this is because they were using cheaper devices. I'm not sure. I don't know why anyone that would protect crypto assets via this type of thing would buy a cheap device. But it's a alternative way of doing it as well. So it's a nice little alternative to store these crypto assets via an encrypted drive. All right, let's move on to hardware wallets. There are a couple of hardware wallets that are on the market. One is the Tracer and the other is a Ledger Nano. These two devices are absolutely fantastic and they work in a very similar way. Every wallet would have what's called a public key and a private key, or a secret key. And the secret key is stored on the wallet and never leaves the wallet. You actually don't know what it is. So when you set it up, it's created on there and is stored on there. So whenever you're interacting with the blockchain or doing anything with it, it never gets exposed to the outside world. It's always remaining on there, and it will essentially sign the transactions for you while you're interacting and then just be processed from that point onwards. So when you're setting up your wallet in Daedalus or Yoroi, if you have a hardware wallet such as a Ledger Nano, you can connect it up to Daedalus, for example, create a brand new wallet, and then store your crypto assets there. So now anytime you interact with the blockchain, or you want to do a transaction, you want to send ADA to another wallet, you will need this physical device. You will need to punch in the PIN code on this particular device, connect it onto your computer so that it can communicate with the blockchain. And then as you go through and do a transaction, you would have to click through various buttons on the device to actually authorize that transaction. So this is probably the best way of securing your wallet from the internet, because it's a physical device that you have to plug in and pull out and also have a PIN code for to actually interact with the blockchain. So if a hacker wanted to get to this device and steal what's on it, they would actually have to break into your home and find your hardware wallet. So that's a lot harder to hack and to phish from someone. For example, what I was mentioning before with the fake version of Daedalus, if you were trying to get into that with a hardware wallet, the hackers wouldn't have the hardware device to be able to sign the transaction and execute a transfer of all your crypto assets to another wallet. They physically need that device so that they can sign the transactions because it has the secret key on it. Now, of course, there was also a downside to a hardware wallet. A hardware wallet still has a seed phrase. When you set up your Ledger Nano, for example, for the very first time, it will ask you to create that 24-word seed phrase and write it down somewhere safe and secure. Now, if you're storing it on a piece of metal, like I mentioned with your seed phrase for your particular wallet, that's totally cool. And then you can store that somewhere safe and you should be okay with that as well. So that's a really good way of doing it. Having the hardware wallet all set up onto your Daedalus or your Roy so that you can interact with the blockchain, and then having the seed phrase for your hardware wallet stored on a piece of metal in a fireproof safe somewhere secure, and you'll be all set up ready to go to do all your crypto storing and holding. Okay, next tip for security of your email. Now, when you're setting up an account anywhere on the internet, it would ask for an email address. This is your unique identifier. Now, when you're wanting to reset your passwords for various accounts that you're using your email for, the notification to reset your password or anything else will go to that email address. Now, if that email address is compromised and someone can get into that email account, they could essentially work out that you have a Binance account or a Coinbase account, initiate a password reset, get that password sent to your email, then take over your account. So email security is highly important because it is basically the gateway to multiple different accounts that you may have access to. So to protect your email account, use something a little bit more secure, a little bit more sophisticated, and something like Gmail is probably the best option out there. Google take high priority in regards to phishing scams, security of their network, of their products, and Gmail is a great, cheap, easy place to start. Now, Gmail accounts, and along with all other cloud-based email accounts such as Office, Outlook, or even Yahoo, have what's called two-factor authentication. And I'll go back into this a little bit later in this episode as well. But two-factor authentication essentially is a secondary device that you need to have to protect your email access. So when you log into your email, you type in your email address, you type in your password, and you'll have this last little bit of two-factor authentication, which is a one-time code, which you'll need to get from your particular device to log in as well. So you have three forms of identification there, not three forms of identification, but three bits of information. One is an email address that is known. One is a password, which may be in your head or in a password manager, which I'll also talk about. And then a physical device, which is your two-factor authentication device, which is usually Google Authenticator, where you can store that one-time password, which generates every minute, and then you can use that to log into your email. So I'll talk about the password manager and the two-factor authentication in a moment, but securing your email to ensure that it is as safe as possible. And as the user asked a little bit early in the question, should I set up a separate email for this? Yeah, maybe you should. Maybe you should make it as secure as possible and away and different from your everyday life, such as your work email, which people could use to socially engineer to get into your main accounts. So if you set up a different one, that's probably a good idea. But if your main one is also weak, please make sure you set that as secure as possible as well. Okay, the next one, passwords, password managers. Now, I've got a whole bunch of links to password managers that I like to use, that I have used in the past. And these password managers help you store and remember all of your passwords for all the different accounts that you have. The last time I logged into my password manager, just a little bit earlier, I saw the number at, I think it was close to 1,278 different accounts that I had stored in that password manager. So that's a whole lot of different accounts. And this is everything from a random website that I downloaded a little piece of software for, all the way to something rather important. I won't mention it. But all these passwords are completely unique. I use a whole different range of emails as well, which are all secured. So having this depth of complex passwords that are impossible to remember. Some of them are also 128 characters long, which are mixed up with uppercase, lowercase numbers, and special characters. So this makes it extremely hard for a hacker to brute force attack it. Now, a brute force attack is basically having your email address and then submitting a random string of characters until they get it right. And if you have 128 characters, it's going to take a long time for a computer to get to that point of trying all the different combinations along with your email address to be able to get in. So it's a very hard thing to do. Maybe one day when we have quantum computers, hackers will be able to hack into things. But really, if they have a quantum computer or access to it, they should be doing much more interesting things. Anyway, use a password manager and strong passwords. It's the initial step into protecting all of your online identity and online accounts. And check out the website for examples of strong passwords and some of these password managers. Okay, this leads me to the second thing, the two-factor authentication. So this came up with the email addresses as well. Two-factor authentication is that extra layer of security that will generate a one-time code that is bound to a physical device of some sort. So I have a smartphone with a authenticator app on there, and my two-factor authentication codes are all synchronized to this particular app. So I have a couple of apps, actually. One of them is Google Authenticator, another one is Authy, and there's a whole bunch of other levels of 2FA that can be built into password managers as well. So you have lots of different options in regards to this. Whatever you choose, please make sure you have two-factor authentication on. I believe a lot of the exchanges and a lot of the email systems and a lot of the accounts that you may set up will enforce the two-factor authentication. So you have no choice but to do it. And the easiest way to set it up is on your phone with the Authenticator app. Now, there is a downside to this. If you ever lose your phone, you lose all of those Authenticator connections to all of your accounts. So what I like to do is have a secondary backup phone. And this backup phone can have a mirror of all of your 2FA connectors accounts and have that as a secondary device which is stored away. It's may be charged, may not be charged. But if you ever lose your phone, you can use that backup device to get into your accounts. So it's a nice, not foolproof, but it's a nice way to actually have a recovery process if you lose those two-factor authentication codes. Now, another little thing that you may be asked when setting up different accounts is security questions. Now, if you're using a security question, usually you get options of these security questions, so you can find ones that suit you so you know how to answer them. If you're using something really simple as your mother's maiden name or your pet's name, this stuff can be socially engineered out of you. A hacker can become your friend online and slowly get this information out of you over time. It's a bit of a long play, but it's possible. They can. So using simple questions like this isn't the best way to go about setting up secure questions like that. Secure answers, sorry. So instead of using the most easiest ones there, try using the harder combinations. And the harder combinations will make it a little bit harder for yourself because you may not know how you would have answered them, but it makes it that much harder and a little bit more foolproof in regards to setting up secure questions on various accounts. So that's a little bit of an extra tip. Not everything will use that, but it's a good way of protecting various different accounts that do use it. Try and use the harder ones. Now, why am I trying to push that one as well? Well, one of the two-factor authentication methods that may be presented to you is SMS. Now, I do not like using the SMS method or the text message method for two-factor authentication. And this is because there is a thing that's called SIM jacking, or SIM swapping. And this is when a hacker socially engineers the customer support team from your phone provider and manages to persuade them into thinking that they are you. And in answering all these really basic security questions, which they may have socially engineered out of you, they would have started to socially engineer the tech support person at the phone company to persuade them to transfer your phone number, which is currently active on your phone, over to their phone. And now if you're trying to trigger password resets and passwords are going to your phone number, the hacker is now getting that. They're also getting all your personal phone calls, and then potentially can be getting access to your Facebook account and all sorts of things. So SMS authentication is not my preferred option when it comes to security two-factor authentication. So it's one thing that I try to completely avoid, and I try and lock that down and make it a little bit harder by making my security questions as hard as possible. Things that maybe I can't even answer if I really tried. But it's all those little things and little tweaks that really make a difference. All right, so that is essentially protecting your crypto wallets, your emails, your passwords, two-factor authentication, which should spread across multiple different things, and then security questions and whatnot to try and protect some of those accounts as well. So that's a good broad base. Now, when it comes to exchange security, it's a whole nother beast as well. So let's get into this. So a lot of exchanges have the same levels of security, and really, if it's presented to you, turn them on. Get all those different exchange level securities set up so that you don't need to worry about what may happen in terms of a hack. All right, so I'll be mainly talking about Binance's security level, which I think is absolutely fantastic. It's fairly high, but if you're jumping onto CoinSpot or Crypto.com or Coinbase or whatever exchange you may be using, I also like to use a couple of various other ones as well, but they all have very similar security methods. And just make sure that you enable all of these different ones that I'm going to talk about right now. Okay, so first off, a security key. Binance has the ability to use what's called a YubiKey. Now, this is a small USB device which you have to plug into your computer, or a USB-C device, and you plug it in, and it has a little thumbprint activator. So you press that, and that generates what's that one-time code. And that one-time code will go along with your username and password to let you into your account. So this is absolutely fantastic. It's very similar to Google Authenticator or Authy, whatever you're using for a 2FA, but it's a physical device which you can punch a button in. So it's as close as possible as you can get to a hardware device. Now, these devices are very small. You can leave it plugged into your laptop, which I don't recommend doing. But the downside to it is I don't know where my YubiKey is. No, can't find it. So if my accounts were hooked up to the YubiKey, hang on, just check. Nope, can't find it. I wouldn't be able to get into my accounts. It's a very small little device. It's basically camouflaged on my desk, and I don't actually remember seeing it on my desk. So I have absolutely no idea where it is. Nope, can't find it. So that's a pretty big downside to this device. Some people attach to their keychains for their house keys, but I've lost my house keys multiple times. And if I lost my YubiKey and my house keys, I'll be doubly affected, because I would have not only locked myself out and not be able to get into my home, but also lost access to my crypto exchange accounts. So it's a very scary kind of thing. So a lot of people swear by them. And if you aren't forgetful and you don't lose these type of things and you store it in a very safe, secure place where you know it always is, good for you. This YubiKey is definitely for you, but it's not for me. So make your own judgment based on the type of person you are. Another option that Binance has is the Google Authenticator. This is probably my preferred option. So like I mentioned a little bit earlier before with two-factor authentication, you can set up your one-time password on the Google Authenticator app. So anytime you're logging in or interacting with the Binance exchange, you will need to punch in that two-factor authentication code, which gets regenerated every minute. So it's a really cool little extra security thing, and make sure that the person that's interacting with the account actually has the correct physical device as well. So that's a really good way of securing your account. Binance also has phone verification, which is that SMS thing that I was talking a little bit about earlier. But again, this could lead to SMS hijacking, the SIM swapping issues. So I try and avoid that wherever I can. They also have email verification. So it's an extra step in regards to doing anything such as withdrawing something from an exchange. So now when you're withdrawing funds from an exchange to a wallet, you will also have to verify it via your email address. So a hacker would have to get into your Binance account, have your Google Authenticator code for that as they're getting into it, also hack your email and the two-factor authentication code on that, and have that all linked up all at the same time. So access to everything so that they can withdraw the funds, verify it via email, and make it all happen. So there's 2 points of hacking that they'll need to get into. So it's just a little bit harder, unless you've used the same password on both, which I really hope you don't. Use that strong password. Make sure those two things are really secure. Now, Binance, in regards to withdrawing, Binance, CoinSpot, a lot of these different exchanges have what's called whitelisting. So withdrawal whitelisting is a feature that allows you to set up an address book. And when you set up this address book of addresses where you can exchange, well, not exchange, but transfer out your crypto assets to these particular addresses, you have to go through that whole two-factor authentication and password process. So if I wanted to transfer ADA from my exchange account over to my personal wallet, I would first have to add in the address of my personal wallet to the whitelist. So I'd put that in. I would have to type in my password for my account. I have to provide the two-factor authentication, and I would also have to verify that I'm doing this via the email. So it makes you go through that entire process before you can add in a brand new address to withdraw out to. So that's absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love that. It's a very, very annoying step if you're doing it for the first time, but once you set it up, it's a whitelisted thing. It assumes that, if you've done it once and you're okay with it, you're going to do it again. So it's a really nice way of whitelisting something and making you go through that security process. So for hackers wanting to exchange out or exit the funds that they're trying to steal from you, they'll have to whitelist all these addresses as well. And it's just that much harder. So it's a little bit more difficult. And it's a really good security measure. So make sure you enable withdrawal whitelisting or whitelisting of addresses on any of your accounts. Now, the last little security thing that Binance has, which I haven't really seen on many other exchanges except for crypto.com, is an anti-phishing code. Now, this is something that is unique to your account. It may be a unique set of characters or a string that is set on your account, which you have set yourself. So that now you know that anytime a notification comes from Binance or the exchange that you're using, as long as it has that unique character code, you know it's actually coming from an authentic source. So a hacking or a phishing type of attack that is very common is to pretend that there is something wrong with your Binance account or your crypto account, and you now need to reset your password. So you unassumingly go, okay, yeah, if something's wrong here, sure, I'll just click on this link and reset my password. But what you don't know is that it's actually taking you to a fake website. If you check the addresses of the website that you're on, you should check that it is the correct spelling, the correct security seal and all that. Because if it's not, then it could potentially be a fake one. And if it's coming from an email that doesn't have that anti-phishing code, it means that you're onto a strange website now where you're just about to type in your password and give it to a hacker. So think about that. This anti-phishing code is absolutely fantastic. It's that extra little thing that can be added in to ensure that you're not being phished by a fake email. So there's a whole bunch of different things there that hopefully you can take away and set yourself up so you're as secure as possible before getting into crypto. So it's let's just recap a little bit. So when you're downloading a wallet, ensure that you're getting it from the right place. Check the address, check the checksum if you know how, and this will doubly ensure that you've got the right wallet set up. With your seed phrases, ensure that you're storing it safely. Piece of metal, store it away, lock it up, make sure no one can see it. That's probably the best advice with the seed phrase. If you have a hardware wallet or can get one, highly recommended. It makes it just that much harder for anyone to access your seed phrases. It will never be online. It will always be on your hardware device, your secret key on your hardware device when you're doing any sort of transaction. No one will be able to get into it. So it's just that much harder. So if you can afford or get a hardware device, I'd highly recommend it. Email security. If you want to set up a brand new email, go ahead. Set up a brand new email account that is away from your everyday life email and ensure that it is as secure as possible. Turn on all those security features, passwords up as strong as possible, and turn on two-factor authentication. Password managers. Please use a password manager. It is impossible for anyone to remember all their passwords, especially myself with over 1,200 different accounts that I need to access from time to time. Each one of those sites has a unique password. So use a password manager so that you can actually manage your password life. Very, very important tip. Two-factor authentication. Ensure that you have two-factor authentication on everything. Even if it's some weird basic site that you may have only logged in once, turn it on. You won't regret it. Have all those two-factor authentication codes that's set up on maybe Google Authenticator, backed up on another phone as well, so that you can use two phones to get into any of these accounts. Then you can store that second backup phone away and not worry about it. Security answers and security questions. Make it as hard as possible. Make it hard for yourself. You should be able to answer it still, but make it incredibly hard, something that people won't commonly try and socially engineer out of you. Now, last little recap, the exchange stuff. Make sure you turn on every single security feature that an exchange has. Everything from security keys, Google Authenticator. Phone verification, I wouldn't recommend, but email verification, definitely recommend that. Withdrawal whitelists, turn them on, enable that. That's a very important thing. And anti-phishing codes. If it has that enabled or has that feature, turn that on so that any email that comes from that exchange you know is coming directly from a true source. All right, that's it. That's all my security tips and a really good basic start in regards to getting secure and securing and setting up your crypto life, I guess. All right, so let's get into this interview with Nick Nikiforakis, the professor from Stony Brook University. He's going to talk all about these phishing scams and his little tool that he's set up called the Cardano phishing bot on Twitter. Check that out as well. All right, let's get into this interview. I have Nick here joining me on the podcast for this episode. He's the creator of something very useful, and I'm glad this is around in the community so people are a little bit more aware of these type of things. It's called Cardano Phishing Bot, and if you jump on Twitter and follow the account, which I'll post links to in the show notes, it's a cool little tool if you put notifications on so that people so anyone that's following it will know when a scam has appeared and what it looks like. So you can alert the community and let everyone know. Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's start off like I always do. Could you please tell everyone a little bit about your background, how you got into crypto, and specifically how you discovered Cardano?
Sure. My name is Nick Nikiforakis. I'm a professor in Stony Brook University, which is located in Long Island, New York. My background is in web security and privacy. So that's the type of research that I do at the university. These are the types of courses that I teach, computer security for undergraduate and graduate students. And, crypto is something that has been very popular in my field for the last, I would say, 10 years, pretty much since the beginning of Bitcoin. It was something that I was avoiding for a long period of time. There were a lot of smart people around me that were saying that this is all a scam and this will never work. And I just took them at their word. But for whatever reason this year, I decided to actually look into cryptocurrencies myself. And that's when I discovered that they were wrong, pretty much. I trusted their judgment when I shouldn't have. I should have actually looked into things myself. So I started looking into Bitcoin specifically and understanding the proof of work protocol and the consensus mechanisms. I started investing some of my own funds into Bitcoin. And then I don't remember exactly how, but I learned about Cardano and ADA and Charles Hoskinson, right? And I went down this new rabbit hole there with proof of stake, right? And hardware wallets and the community voting on things through Project Catalyst. So that's how I arrived at Cardano specifically.
And thank you for being here as well. It seems like we're going to get a little free lecture about web security in general. So thanks for this. So can you tell us about this bot that you've created for the community?
Sure. Yeah. So I was, when I started reading into Cardano and watching videos from Charles Hoskinson, right, and I was just scrolling on YouTube one day and I saw that there was a live event that was, at Cardano, and there were thousands of people watching it. And I said, let me see who's talking about Cardano and what it is that they're saying. And I clicked on it and I saw what people now know is a scam, where effectively someone had, created a video montage of taking an old interview of Charles, right, embedding it in a larger image that says there is some sort of Cardano event going on, and then encouraging people to go to a specific website to participate in that event, right? And then that website pretty much, again, had some sort of authoritative picture of Charles, right, and was using nice, CSS style sheets to make it look all very professional. They were telling you, look, we are giving ADA away, just send, this much ADA, or, send as much ADA as you want to send over some threshold. This is an interesting part of the scam, actually, that there is a lower limit. And we will double it, right? And given my background, I immediately knew that this was a scam, but it was actually the first time that I had encountered this scam, right? And then I kept pretty much, once you notice something, you can't stop noticing it again and again and again, right? Yeah. And so the magnitude and the number of scams that I was watching on a daily basis motivated me to sit down and actually build the Cardano bot that is on Twitter.
I see on Facebook, on Twitter, messages from people and posts saying, "Is this real?" Or even worse, I see people saying, "Yeah, I don't believe in Charles anymore. I sent him 10,000 ADA, 20,000 ADA, and he never sent anything back. Like, what's the deal? What's up with this project?" Right. How are people falling for this? Yeah. Like, what are the scammers doing to trigger people to actually want to send ADA to a random stranger?
It's very, very unfortunate. And so there is this, type of attacks in computer security called social engineering. And of course, there is this social engineering exists in the real world as well. But effectively, it involves attackers convincing people to act against their interests, right? And so phishing, the traditional phishing, when you get an email from your bank and then you send someone your username and your password, that is the prototypical example of social engineering. And so social engineering attacks pretty much evolve and they just keep up current with the times. So in the US, when it's tax season, you have a lot of IRS scams where people call you and they claim that you owe back taxes. And suddenly, you need to go and buy gift cards from Walmart to pay back the IRS, right?
Why would anyone use gift cards to pay for it?
Right.
It's strange. Yeah.
I think it's a game of numbers, right? So when you have, in the US, for example, when you have 330 million people, what fraction do you need to fall for it, right? You can make a lot of money when we're in 0.000% of people that you call, instead of hanging up with you, actually engage with you. And these guys, they use all these tricks from social engineering. So they appeal to authority. There is urgent language. There are consequences, right? And they typically try to, like, for example, for other types of scams, they work better on older people, right? And I guess now with crypto scams, they will work, assuming that it's more the younger people that are involved in the cryptocurrencies. Now these are the scams that work more on the younger people.
Yeah.
But there is also an interesting technical part of this that I can go into if you want.
Yeah, please.
So if you think about, let's say, 15 years ago or so, it was very easy to get malware on your computer. So you would land on the wrong website. You didn't need to download anything, right? You didn't need to download something sketchy and do something. You would actually just be infected merely by visiting that website. And so this was the time effectively of browsers being in their nascency, being vulnerable to a lot of exploits. And so if you would just land on a website, you would get infected, malware would get installed in your machine, and it would do whatever malware would do. Steal your data, steal your emails, steal credit card numbers. But in the last 15 years, the browser vendors like Mozilla Firefox and Google Chrome, they have done these great advancements in security where your browser is sandboxed. And the end result of this, and there's a lot of investment in terms of security, the end result is that it's very, very difficult to have an exploit where you just visit a website and something bad happens, right? So what has happened is, because this is so difficult, attackers have pivoted away from this type of drive-by downloads, this is what they were called, into social engineering scams, right? Because now the weak part of this interaction is no longer the browser, it's the person operating the browser. And so, instead of downloading something, now you are actually asked to perform an action. And again, you have all of these, classic signs of hurry up, the big picture of Charles, fear of missing out, this scrolling list of supposed transactions that most of these websites show you when you visit them, and then people just fall for it, right? And they send their data.
Yeah, I really think that this whole social engineering thing is it's very, very interesting, and how scammers have attached themselves to human emotion to actually get past security and part ways, make people part ways with their hard-earned cash. Like one person I know personally got a Microsoft tech support phone call, and they had to do a screen share with them to do some sort of testing. And of course, their whole process of the scammers either store something and then ask for payment. She went off and, tested something or rather for her bank account just to make sure everything's okay. And within a few hours, her bank account was wiped clean.
Yeah, exactly. We actually, pivoting off of that, my students and I, like 2 years ago, we published the largest study of technical support scams, which is exactly what you described, right? And so we built actually a tool that discovers them in the wild. So this shares similarities with the Cardano bot on Twitter. So we have methodologies that we can find bad things online. So we kind of go out looking for them as opposed to trying to avoid them like a normal person would, right? Yeah. And then the second component was actually that we interacted with 60 scammers on the phone. So we called them up, pretended to be victims, gave them access to virtual machines that looked realistic, and then we were recording everything. So we pretty much caught all their tricks, their social engineering tricks, the IP addresses that they were remote connecting into our machines, how long it would take before they talked about dollars. So we produced quite a detailed report on the techniques that these guys were using. But if you think about this, for the technical support scams, you would need to call someone, right? Give them access to your machine, let them do their song and dance about how your machine is infected. Yeah. Be convinced that you're indeed infected, and then accept a charge and give them your credit card, or in your friend's case, somehow access to your bank account. With the crypto scams, actually, there's only one thing that you need to fall for, right? And if you fall for it, it's done. There's no reversing of transactions, right? You can't call your bank or your credit card to cancel anything. It's done, right? So in some sense, even though it targets a smaller part of the population, just because of the cryptocurrency being applicable to a small part of the population, the steps to a successful scam are fewer.
And it relies on the person just sending cryptocurrency to a particular address. So how do we stop this? Yeah,
this is the typical. This is pretty much, how do we stop phishing? How do we stop technical support scams?
Yeah.
This is the new edition of how do we stop this. So pretty much the answer for this is always this two-part solution of a technical approach and an educational approach, right? And the technical approach is what I try to do with the Cardano phishing bot on Twitter, where effectively I have built the infrastructure that will find this and tell you that these things are out there. So you can know that this is an issue. You can maybe tell your friends. People who just went into Cardano will maybe hopefully see a tweet about a scam, calling it a scam before they actually see a real scam in the wild by themselves. So technical approaches that find these things in the wild and initiate takedowns, because there's not much else you could do, right? I mean, people can. It's even easier than before, right? You can just create an arbitrary number of wallets. You can keep changing wallets, so there's no wallet that you can block per se. There's no wallet address that you can block, right? And you can keep registering domains. So there is a technical part of finding it early and killing it so that it reaches as few people as possible. And then the educational component, right, which through your podcast and through all the other resources that are there in the ecosystem, people have to sort of be told that this is a thing, it happens daily. You really need to be aware that, if you see a big picture of Charles on a website promising you money, you should not believe this.
I know. Charles actually has done videos about there is no such thing as a ADA giveaway, and right. You should not be parting with your ADA for any reason whatsoever. I find it really interesting how convincing they do make it and how realistic it all looks. And then if you look on YouTube, when you have a look at some of these scams, they have thousands of people watching. Yep. They're on a fake channel, which they may have created, and the fake channel has thousands of subscribers. And how do they do this? And plus, it's on the homepage of YouTube. So they've worked the algorithm, yep. And they're appearing right on top. How are they doing this? I'm still in the exploratory mode where I'm trying to understand, how scammers are doing what they're doing. So one thing that I've understood is that at least for some fraction of the YouTube accounts, they hack them, right? So they find channels that have thousands or tens of thousands of followers already, right? And then they hack them. Presumably, they do a credential brute forcing attack. A lot of people reuse passwords. So if they know who's the owner of the channel and what is their email, they could look in previous password dumps from other hacks in the last 10 years. And potentially assume that they're reusing passwords across, let's say, Gmail and something else that was hacked. So through these steps, they can actually get access to that. So they get immediate access to a large number of followers that are ready for them. And then they apparently can go through and change the name of the channel, change the logo of the channel, right? And so this could be something about golfing, and suddenly it has a picture of Cardano, and it says Cardano, right? And now they start doing lives. And this is also very interesting. I noticed that, so I haven't figured out yet if they are expecting people to just find the live by themselves on YouTube, or if they have a way of feeding traffic to YouTube, right, towards their live. But what I noticed is that sometimes if you search for live YouTube videos and you specify the keyword Cardano, you get things that are clearly scams. I mean, you can tell from the thumbnail that this is a scam. But once you click it, the video actually is unrelated. And what I've noticed is that it's like another YouTube video, potentially related to investing, where they have zoomed in to part of the video, and that's the only part they're showing you. And that this zooming in part, I think they're doing this to evade detection of double material, where YouTube recognizes that you're uploading someone else's video. So they're evading that. And then they choose when to actually effectively make this really live. So they switch away from this, zoomed in, unrelated video of someone talking about something random to this, prepared presentation supposedly of Charles with the domain to the website, the little window showing Charles talking about Cardano, and then hoping that people will pretty much pivot from YouTube onto their malicious website. Wow. Okay. Very, very sophisticated. I'll be updating my passwords. What other security tips are there? So unique, strong passwords is definitely one. Can you give us and the audience a couple of more security tips so we can protect ourselves?
Of course, yeah. So the passwords is if you would do one thing, it would be passwords, right? So we have to stop thinking that we will create in our minds a strong password and we'll remember it. This will not work because, each person has probably more than 100 accounts at this point across the web. And so if you start reusing your password, what you're doing is that you are increasing the chances of getting hacked, right? Merely by just one of these websites where you use your password gets hacked, their password database is dumped, people crack it, and then there is an army of bots already. It's happening daily that is then trying all of these credentials across other services, right? So you should really, not you specifically, I mean, you included, but pretty much everyone listening to the podcast should not reuse passwords ever, period, right? And the only way of doing this is through a password manager, right? We don't have the capability of remembering 100 strong passwords. So using a password manager, right, either an online version that you pay for like LastPass, or like an offline open source version like KeyPass, which is what I use, and then pretty much you need to remember one strong password that locks and unlocks this password manager, right? And once you do that, then all your other passwords are available for you. You don't need to remember them anymore, and they can be arbitrarily complicated with uppercase and lowercase and special characters. So really moving away from, I'll remember the passwords in my head, to a password manager where you really have unique, strong passwords per website. That's like the single most important thing that people can do. Another thing is obviously maintaining this very skeptical attitude when you're browsing the web, right? I think in my mind, I've tried to understand why, let's say my parents or my grandparents, why they think the way they think. And I've made this analogy with television, right? That when we were growing up, there was a number of channels, and whoever was on TV had certain levels of authority implicitly, right? Because no one could just get on TV, right? You would need to get a license, broadcast, pay a lot of money to, potentially the government to get the license to broadcast. And so people that are coming from this mindset, whatever I see on TV is to a certain extent authoritative and trustworthy. If you carry this over to the internet and you say whatever I see on the website is therefore, because a website says it, right? It's authoritative and trustworthy. That's a very wrong mindset to have, right? And so people who are more technical, they know that you can go out and buy a domain name that says, getcardanonow.com for $10. You can get some free hosting, and you can have a scam online in 5 minutes. And this can be a beautiful picture of Charles, right, with very, beautifully made pages that it's all completely fake, right? And so people have to really, become more skeptical, right? There is this usual saying, I think you may have repeated it in your podcast, that says, if something is too good to be true, then it's true, right? Just learn that no one will send you money just because you went to that website at that time. Right?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So there's some absolutely brilliant tips. I think this whole authoritative thing on the internet, if it's on the internet, it's real. I think it's an issue across multiple different factors of our lives. It's not just these scams into Cardano and cryptocurrencies. It's all the way down to politics and everything else that is published online. So it's a little bit of a mindset that people need to, I guess, wake up to and change in certain things. All right. So with all these scams popping up constantly, and you mentioned a little bit earlier, being able to take them down, how can we report them, get them taken down, and how does that process work?
Right. So effectively, you know this already, but maybe for your audience, a website is made up of a couple of parts. So there is a domain name like google.com or, getfreeada.net. So there is this one element of a website being online. And then there is the hosting provider that is providing hosting for that domain name, right? So that they're serving the HTML pages and the JavaScript and the CSS for your browser to render the website that you're going to. So you already have two parties where if one of the two parties is missing, the website doesn't work. And you also have something above them, which is the registry. For example, if you have a .com domain name, then I believe it's VeriSign. VeriSign will be the registry, right? So when we report things, effectively, we can either report them at their source. So we can tell their the place where they bought their domain name, let's say GoDaddy or Namecheap. We can tell them, hey, here is a scam. We can, if next to this, we have the hosting provider, where your domain name you may have purchased and you may be managing the domain name on Namecheap, but you're hosting the website, let's say on Amazon Web Services. So you could also potentially report the offending IP address to the hosting provider. And so these are pretty much attacking the problem at the root. And then you have other programs that are running to protect users, where the website can still be online, but your browser makes it really, really difficult for you to get there, right? So most of us at this point have encountered at least one, scary-looking picture from our browsers that says you're about to go to a deceptive website. Are you really, really sure you want to go? And over the years, they have made it increasingly hard for you to want to go there, right? You have to click on something and then click on another something, right? So they're really trying to stop people from just clicking through easily and reaching to the bad website. So you could, in theory, go ahead and report this malicious site to, for example, Google Safe Browsing or to OpenFish with a PH. And then they do their vetting, however they do the vet, because, of course, you can have false reports. And then this website will be added to a list of bad websites, pretty much, that your browser tests against each and every website that you go to, so that you may believe the YouTube video, you may type the domain name, you're about to go to the website, but it's now your browser stopping you, or at least making it very difficult for you to proceed. So pretty much, what people can do when they encounter such a scam is if they could take 1 minute to, let's say, report this to Google Safe Browsing, that's about how much it takes. That is very helpful, right? And if someone has 2 minutes available, maybe they can do one more report to the registrar, for example, Namecheap, right, or GoDaddy, or one of these. And the Cardano bot that I built is trying to help you in this process. So it's telling you where this thing is hosted, so you could, go to the right entity and tell them about the bad website, but also to warn the entities themselves. So Namecheap, for example, has been very much on the ball. So I would say about 10% of the websites that my bot has been discovering were hosted on Namecheap. And even though I wasn't tagging Namecheap or anything, right, it was just pretty much in the text of the tweet that says that the hosting provider for this current scam is Namecheap, they seem to run filters on tweets and to get like a notification when someone mentions Namecheap. So they are the most on the ball right now in terms of taking down scams very, very fast.
All right. That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that and letting everyone know how to report the scams and try and protect the rest of the cryptocurrency and specifically the Cardano community from these scams as well. So what's next? What are you working on next? How are you going to improve the bots? You got some other little projects that you're going to work on?
So I'm trying to figure out, how to make this the most useful that it can be, right? So right now, pretty much I am tweeting, one tweet per scam that we find, and this has received some good feedback, and it has caused the takedown of at least 10% of the scams. So on the non-technical side, I'm trying to reach out to people that I know in companies and tell them about the scam. So, for example, Cloudflare, I went manually and reported a few of these scam websites to them, and they just were not convinced that this is a bad site, right? And they are really, Cloudflare is one of the biggest services that these guys are using. So I would say, let's say roughly 50 to 60% of the scams that we find, they're hiding behind Cloudflare. And at the moment, as of right now, it doesn't appear to me that the people who are receiving these reports of malicious websites, that they know about these types of crypto giveaway scams. So there is an educational component of the people that are vetting these reports, right, that needs to be done, because otherwise the utility of my reports is limited, right? If you just see it and you say, okay, this is a perfectly fine website, I haven't achieved much, right? And so I've thought about other things. For example, maybe automatically extracting the wallet address from the scam website, so that maybe we can have a list of malicious addresses that could potentially be incorporated as an opt-in in various wallets, so that if you're about, let's say, to move money to one of these addresses, you get a warning that says, this has been reported in a scam. Are you sure you want to proceed? Right? I think people should still be allowed to proceed, because that's the whole point of crypto, that there can be no middleman that will tell you that, that you are not allowed to send money to who you want to send money. So philosophically, I think wallets should definitely allow you to lose money if you really, really want to lose money, right? But maybe an extra little, warning that says this is a reported scam. Click here to read more. That would be an interesting thing to try out if there is, wallet providers that have a taste for this. And then maybe another thing, what I mentioned from YouTube. Right now, I am not using YouTube to find scams. I'm finding a different way. I can go into a little bit more into detail if you want that. But what I would like to add is potentially this component where, let's say once an hour, I have a program that goes to YouTube, searches for Cardano, searches for live, clicks the top 10 videos, and then we do a bit of optical character recognition to see if we can again find the telltale signs of a scam, right? And pretty much then extract the domain name from that video, send a different set of crawlers to that domain name, make sure that this is indeed a scam, and then report it as we would report the rest.
Cool. All right. So constant monitoring and integration into the ecosystem itself. I can put you into contact with quite a few wallet creators at the moment, which I think they'll be very interested in integrating something like that and making it actually work. So thank you so much. Looking forward to these little updates. Not little, they're quite big updates, and all little security
They feel little, but there's a lot of code behind them.
Oh yeah, definitely. And thank you so much for all the effort and everything that you're doing there as well.
Of course, thank you.
All right. So how can people follow you, and what's the Twitter bot, the handle of the Twitter bot?
So the Twitter bot is called Cardano Phishing. I wanted to be Cardano Phishing bot, but it was too long. So Twitter didn't allow that. So you can find that on Twitter. And there is no website as of today that corresponds to that bot. I think I'll make one in the next few months, and maybe post the list of malicious sites there in addition to tweets. Because I don't necessarily want to be present on only one platform. And then, you can, if you care about web security in general, you can find my Twitter account, which is Nick Nikiforakis on Twitter. And from that, you can find my webpage with all our papers that are always sort of freely available. People can read. And there you can also find my email address if someone wants to contact me.
Okay, brilliant. I'll put a couple of links in the descriptions for this episode so people can find it as well.
Excellent.
Nick, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and learning a little bit more about these phishing scams and a little bit more about web security as well.
Thank you very much for having me.
So thank you so much, Nick, for that podcast interview. I'm really hoping that everyone got something out of that. If my security tips weren't enough, Nick's are definitely right up there, and just secure your life. Make sure you're really aware of these phishing and crypto scams that are out there. There are so many of them. You could just jump on to the live area of the YouTube website. So if you go to youtube.com, click on live, type in Cardano, you will see a whole bunch of live videos, and they're the scams. Don't click on them. Don't go to them. Some of them have thousands and thousands of viewers, and I can assure you they are scams. If it looks too good to be true, I know you're going to look anyway. I'm telling you not to, but I know you're going to go there and find it and have a look and see what these scams are like. Take a screenshot and tell everyone tell all your friends these are scams. Okay, all right. So that's it for me for this podcast episode. Like I always like to say and encourage you all to do, please leave us that 5-star rating and review. Really helps with the discoverability of the podcast. And until next time, everyone, seriously, please keep your seed phrases safe and secure. All right, bye.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debating. IOHK, Emergo, we're not affiliated, not Cardano Foundation. We just gotta say it, a show that you can learn, and it's for your entertainment. Yeah, you gotta check it, don't wanna be missing that. You were tuned in to the Learn Cardano podcast. Yeah, giving insight, ain't another show like this. When it come to crypto, invest at your own risk. Might not be for everyone, but who it is for, we keep giving you some info and plenty more. Hey, yeah, the Learn Cardano podcast. Hey, yeah, the Learn Cardano podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Keep it locked right here. Let's go.